It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Buffalo Beauts General Manager, Nate Oliver. How are you doing today?
Great, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you this evening and happy to talk Beauts hockey with you.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to become a general manager for the NWHL?
Sure. I think for anybody that's into sports, right? We all have some idea. You can't help it, but kind of play through in your own mind what it would be like if you were the one running the team. What players would you sign, and what players would you draft? It's sort of like fantasy football or fantasy hockey in that regard. So I think that everybody to some extent has that. Those types of thoughts go through their mind, especially if they're somebody that's enamored with sports. And I've loved hockey all of my life. I've followed women's hockey since the '98 Nagano games, and it's something that I've always kind of had a very strong interest in. Outside of hockey, I've been in management for close to 20 years. I work in higher education. I work at the University of Buffalo, and I'm an associate director for their campus living department. So a lot of my management skills that I apply to hockey are things that I've acquired through my work outside of hockey. So I'm very upfront in telling people this, that being the GM of the Buffalo Beauts is certainly a dream come true for me, especially because I've loved women's hockey for so long. I've loved hockey in general for so long, and I'm a Buffalo boy, born and raised. And I've, found myself around the team for a number of years since close to the league's beginning, and to have this opportunity arise, it's. I look back now at things that maybe happened in my life 10, 5, however many years ago, that culminated into this opportunity. And I'm very thankful for that and excited to have taken on the role.
What was your time like whenever you got the role as community relations for the Buffalo Beauts before becoming, of course, the general manager?
Yeah, that was actually a really wonderful opportunity for me. The focus of that role was getting our Buttes players out and involved in the Buffalo community. And that season in particular, we're talking about the 2019-20 season. We had a few more players on the Buttes that year that were from Buffalo. There was 6 of them on the squad. But this past season, there was only 2 from the Buffalo area that were on the team. My point in mentioning that is that the vast majority of the Buttes players are not from Buffalo. They're from abroad, and in many instances from pretty far away. So, they didn't really know. Many of them had never been to Buffalo before. If they had, it was only here to play hockey and didn't really know much about the city or the community. But Buffalo has a lot of wonderful things about it. Its nickname is the City of Good Neighbors, and I feel that it very much so lives up to that nickname. There's a lot to do here in terms of culture and food and music, and it's really a wonderful place to live. But in saying all that, one thing that I can also say about the city is that it truly loves its sports teams. And that's one of the ways that you can truly endear yourself to the Buffalo community, is by being out there and being tangible. So it was very important for me personally, but then more especially in the role that I was in, to get the players out and involved in the Buffalo community. So we would do at least one big event each month. We did a visit to Children's Hospital where we delivered toys and stuffed animals. We were at Santa's workshop at Christmas time at the Buffalo Botanical Gardens, the Great Pumpkin Farm at Halloween time. Just all these great things to do around Buffalo. And the players would go there and they'd wear their Beauts jerseys and sign autographs and take photos. We did a lot of work with the Buffalo History Museum, but it was a great way for our team to connect with the community. And in every place that we went to, It was wonderful in that we garnered new fans just from that experience. People had said, "Oh wow," they wanted to know what we were about, and said, "Hey, well, well, I'll definitely come out to some of your games and buy tickets." And lo and behold, as the season went along, we would run into those people that we had maybe met at a community event and ended up coming out to see our games in person. So that was great. And in addition to that, I was also somewhat of a de facto assistant GM. I handled a lot of I assisted my predecessor, Mandy Cronin, with a lot of the duties that a GM might do, including times where Mandy wasn't able to go on the road with the team, and I served as a proxy GM in those instances too. So I kind of got my feet wet in the GMing part of it by being the team's community manager.
Can you talk about, of course, once Mandy left and you took over the role as GM? What was that transition like?
Well, I think I probably had an easier time of it than what other newly named GMs might have had. It was certainly helpful for the fact that I'd been around the team for a while, even though I'd only officially worked for the team that past season, the 2019-20 season. That was my first season official capacity of the team, but I'd been around the team prior to that as a hockey writer and knew a lot of the players, knew the lay of the land, knew kind of the logistics behind how home games were supposed to run and that sort of a thing. So I probably had an advantage as opposed to anybody else in that situation, and that I had so much familiarity already. So it was kind of an interesting time. Mandy had already done partaken in the NWHL draft, which had been that April, and had already signed 4 players before I came on board. She had signed Taylor Kersey, Lisa Chesson, Marie Jo Pelletier, and Carly Jackson were already on board before I took over as GM. But then, as soon as I start, my first official day was May 10th, and we had, if I remember correctly, I think we only had like 5 more days left in the restricted free agency period before our players became free agents. So really had to hit the ground running. And get players signed rather quickly. So I would say my first day on the job, I had to make a couple of contract offers already, and I also, of course, wanted to make sure that I reached out to all the players from the team, from the 2019-20 team, to let them know the news and that I'd be speaking with them. Spoke with all the staff, and it was a lot. Like I said, it was hitting the ground running, but it was all stuff that I was prepared for and was excited to do.
Can you talk about, of course, your time working with the hockey writers?
Yeah, I have a lot. I owe a lot of thanks to the hockey writers. In so many ways. But they that opportunity working for the hockey writers led to some of my best opportunities and best moments in hockey, some of the best experiences of my life, I should say, for that matter. I don't think I know in my own mind that I wouldn't have become GM of the Beauts if it wasn't for my role with the hockey writers. I mean, that's kind of how I got around the team to begin with, is that for season 3, the 2017-18 season, I was credentialed by the hockey writers to cover the Beauts as the hockey writers beat writer. And so I was at all the games and a lot of the practices. I did a few road games as well that season. And I started to get my face familiarized in the women's hockey community from a writer's perspective, from a writer's standpoint. The players got to know me a bit, the coaches, and that really got my foot in the door, especially with the fact that I was credentialed. As a quick side note to that, I was also credentialed for them to work the World Junior Championships when they were in Buffalo last. I was the only writer for the hockey writers that was there, so that led to a lot of great experiences where I got to meet and interview players like Brady Kachuk and Casey Middlestad, who are some of some have turned into stars of the NHL today. I've also had the privilege of working 3 different NHL combines for the hockey writers, and that was all through being credentialed and my writing work for them. So I can clearly say that if I had never worked for the hockey writers, I'd never have had a chance to be the GM of the Buffalo Beauts, and that's kind of what I was alluding to before. In that things that I've done in my life and decisions that I've made, opportunities that I had, they really everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. At least matters of importance. There's no coincidence in important matters in life, and I definitely can pinpoint my time as a hockey writer is leading to this opportunity for where I am today.
That's so amazing. Of course, going back to you said whenever you signed Taylor Kersey and the other players, how important was it to sign Taylor Kersey and then get her sister Hunter Kersey on the team too?
Sure. So, actually, I was fortunate in that Mandy Cronin had signed Taylor. So I didn't. That was a heavy lift there because Taylor was obviously came off of a career year in 2019-20, and was set a number of records and marks for the Beauts, and was an NWHL All Star, and just had such a phenomenal year. So. It was helpful from my perspective, the fact that she was already in her contract before I came on board, so I didn't have to handle that part of it. But what ended up happening was is that it was even more critical in some ways then that I bring back other key contributors to the team, like Taylor, that had been around a bit, and or at least had a season under their belt, and whom I knew would be positive key pieces going forward. But then you also have to sprinkle in some new and fresh faces. And you mentioned Hunter. So Hunter, we were pretty familiar with already. At the very beginning of the 2019-20 season, we played an exhibition game between the Beauts and the Brock University Badgers. And at the time, Hunter was a senior at Brock. So it was really the coaches and my first opportunity to see her in action. I always knew that Taylor had a sister and that played hockey, but I didn't know much about her. So that was our first chance to really see Hunter and see what she could do. They're night and day in terms of the type of players that they are. They're both, although they do have some of the same qualities, they're both lightning quick. I mean, they're very, very fast. They hustle like there's no tomorrow. But whereas Taylor's more of the finesse, tremendous stick handler, dipsy doodle, and very crafty skater and stick handler. Hunter's more of a banger in that regard, and she plows into corners and goes into the dirty areas. She was on our top penalty killing unit during this past season in Lake Placid, and that's more just a testament to how she is as a player, and that she does more of the dirty work as opposed to Taylor. But I do think as well too that there's a connection between siblings, and there's certainly something in genetics. And I think that when you pair a couple of siblings on the ice together, it leads to great opportunities that maybe just wouldn't be expected. Um, Unfortunately, Taylor was not able to play in Lake Placid with us. Hunter was, but I did have the privilege of seeing them combined at practices a few times, and they were just a lot of fun to watch.
As Lake Placid wrapped up, can you talk about, of course, the experience from a GM's point of what Lake Placid was like?
For sure. I have to say, it was stressful at times, as you can imagine. The whole past season was, and it's just a stressful time in general for society, right? I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and of course, we're trying to. Here we were at the time trying to play professional sports during a pandemic, and look out for the players' safety and staff members' safety, while also, trying to do something fun and do something nice and do something that we all care about, because women's hockey's in everyone's blood and bones for the players and the staff that went to Lake Placid and participated in last season. So it was definitely challenging. There was times where, up until I want to say it's late October, beginning of November, we were practicing on both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border because we couldn't get all of our Canadians into the U.S. With the way that the border was closed. So we had Beauts practices on both sides since a little more than half of our team is Canadian. We had 11 Canadians, 10 Americans, and 2 Slovakian players. So it was a lot of navigating having to do. So once we got there, I think in some ways we relaxed a bit more. And I don't want to overlook just the splendor and the excitement around being in Lake Placid in such a hallowed hockey mecca of some ways, I guess you could say. I mean, and even though there was only one Buttes player, Lisa Chesson, who was born in the 1980s, everybody else, and she certainly wasn't old enough to have seen the Miracle on Ice, but we had the youngest team in the NWHL, but they all knew about the historical importance of what playing in Lake Placid was all about. We watched the movie Miracle as we rode the bus from Buffalo into Lake Placid, and that was a lot of fun. And then you look at it, and once we got there, and it seemed to be snowing. It snowed pretty much constantly. I can't think of a time that it wasn't snowing there. So it was very pretty in the mountains and all that. But then you get out on the ice, and that you're standing on the same ice and the same benches that Herb Brooks was on, and Jim Craig, and even you look at the Soviets like Sergei Makarov and Vyacheslav Fetisov and Tretiak and all these great names. Mike Ramsey, who of course played in Buffalo for many years. It's something that you can't really deny the gravity and the impact that it had on all of us. So although it didn't go, it didn't end up going the way that we had hoped for and the way that we had planned because of COVID. I think as time continues to go on, players and staff will look back and just say, this is really something special. It was a great opportunity for us, and it's something that it stands it stands of its own in our minds and memories for what it was.
Can you talk about, of course, what a typical day in the life of a general manager is before game days and during game days?
Sure. So before game days, there is a lot of lead up, just prep work, I guess you could say, and it also depends on whether you're doing a home game or an away game. So a home game is probably easier in some ways, although it's almost like I would compare it to if you were hosting a holiday party at your house or a Super Bowl party. You want to make sure that there's enough food and enough seating and all these little details, right? So it's kind of like that. We certainly rely heavily on our volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers with us that will run our merchandise table and run our penalty boxes and do crowd control and things like that. So you do need to rely on the kindness and the goodness of people that just want to be involved and help out. Thankfully, I have a very able-bodied a game day events manager, Austin Shannon. He didn't really get an opportunity to do the true role this time around because we didn't have home games, but we did do a fan experience, a virtual fan experience that he got to spearhead. So getting back to your question, though, there's a lot of prep work that you need to do in order to do that. So you do things like set up the merchandise table and set up the ticketing booths to make sure that that's all situated. Things like game pucks for the game and tables for your statisticians and timekeeper. You need to provide water and Gatorade for all your players and for the opposing team as well too. Since they're traveling, so you very much act the role of the host on those days. And although as GM, you're not doing all the work yourself, it's still ultimately your responsibility. So you spend the mornings pretty much dialing in and checking in with all of those people that I just mentioned, whether it's the volunteers or the events manager, let alone your own coaches and your players, to make sure that everybody's good, everybody's ready to go and get the show underway. So a lot of orchestration, a lot of logistics. It feels good getting the game started, because once it's underway, things kind of calm down a bit and you can do your thing. Road games is maybe I tend to like the road games in that regard, because you're more, instead of being the host, you're kind of the guest for whatever team you're going to play. But it's a different kind of preparation that you still need to do, because it's your responsibility to get your players and your staff to the opposing city safe and sound. You're responsible for all of their travel arrangements, whether it's bus rides or airfare, and certainly booking the hotel. and you need to create a good agenda as well too. So planning out their meal times, planning out their practice times, making sure that they got enough time in there that they can sleep. You try to afford some free time as well too, and we do a lot of coaches meetings and line meetings, defense pairing meetings, and goalie meetings when we're on the road. So um, thankfully we have things like Zoom, especially during the pandemic, that help with that. But in a normal season, you're more so in a meeting room or a conference room, meeting with your team as you get ready for the games on the road. So in both instances, whether you're home or away, there's a lot of prep work that you're doing, and it does take a lot of responsibility and a lot of planning in advance.
Can you talk about, of course, some of the fan experiences, what were happening before COVID?
Yeah, I think I have to say that the Buttes are very fortunate, and this shouldn't be really, this isn't a surprise to anybody. I think in some ways, some folks, and maybe with fans in other cities, or maybe players in other cities, are a little bit jealous of the fan support that the Buttes have, because it really is tremendous. Some of our fans have been following us since the very first season. They're very loyal. They're at all the games. They come to a lot of the practices, and they go out of their ways to just be thankful and just gracious, and look after our players. They'll put together, one time they ordered us a pizza for after practice, or some ice cream and things like that. I mean, they really go out of their way to help and support the players. So in terms of their experiences on a regular basis, after our home games, we always have a lineup where a player's autograph line, where all the players on the team, whether they played in the game or if they were a healthy scratch, they all put their jerseys on, and they line up in a row, and each person can go through the lineup and get autographs on a photo or a pennant, or a program of some sort. They can pause for pictures of the players, so with the players. So those types of things are a lot of fun, just for doing at home game experiences. Aside from that, we have done a lot of meet and greets. We did a bowling event for charity, for helping foster kids have summer camp experiences. It was bowling with the Beauts, and that was a great opportunity, a lot of fun as well too. We did a toddler story time where we read books to children. We did some work with similar thing at the Buffalo Public Library. So there's a lot of it's very important to me, especially not only as the GM of the Buttes, but just a a fan of hockey in general, that we provide experiences where our players are tangible to the fans. I think that's so important for selling your sport and selling your team, and getting people to support you, is you create those experiences where your players become real to the public and become real to the fans, especially for the young kids. It's so essential as we grow our sport, and it's been wonderful for the players too. They certainly enjoy meeting the little kids, especially the little girls. We have a honorary captain of the day at each game, and we let usually between intermissions, we let youth teams skate on the ice and do different fun events and challenges. So that's really cool, and it's something that our players enjoy, just connecting with the young fans.
That's amazing. Can you talk about, of course, balancing being the GM of the Buffalo Beauts and working at the University of Buffalo and what that's like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that helps with the balance, is that there's a lot of similarities between the two. And when I knew that we were going to be doing this interview together, that was one thing that I wanted to stress, is that one thing that helps a general manager in sports be successful, is that if they've had management experience before. So a lot of situations that maybe I deal with it as a general manager, the good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever the challenges might be, it's not something that I haven't faced before in my career. Now, I've certainly, I was never a GM in hockey before, but there's a lot of overlap in terms of how you interact with people and how you interact with businesses and how you make certain decisions for the betterment of your team. There's definitely a lot of similarities between the two. But the other thing that really helps it as well too is that I'm able to differentiate quite clearly between the two, and that work is work for me. I've worked in higher education, like I said earlier, for close to 20 years as a manager in one capacity or another. I've worked at three other schools besides the University of Buffalo, or prior to getting to the University of Buffalo, in the Buffalo area. So I was really able to hone my management skills in that regard, but I keep it separate from that. So I have my work life, and then certainly my personal life as well too. But hockey is more my passion, right? So I have my work and I have my passion. And when it comes down to working within your passion and being a manager in your with something that is your passion, it doesn't feel like work. It's enjoyment. It's what I love to do. I love being the general manager of the Buffalo Beauts. I said previously that it's a dream come true for me, and it very much is. And I get to work in professional hockey. And the thing that's really the what makes it all come together is just the people that you meet through the experience. Even meeting somebody like you through this podcast, and you're now a new person that I know in my life. And I certainly apply that to all the different players that I've been fortunate to work with, and the different coaches that I've been fortunate to work with, and some of the fans that I've gotten to know. And even just rink staff, people at the rink that help us and support us and bend over backwards to make the Buttes comfortable and happy. It's important to branch out and meet those people like that, because you never know later on down the line when your paths are going to cross again, and what doors those interactions with people open for you. I said it earlier that I don't think that there's coincidence when it comes to matters of importance. And I can certainly pinpoint people in my life that I met early on in either my working career, my hockey career, and that relationship has benefited me later on down the line. And it's something I try to afford our players and our staff as well too. I want to build them up as well too, and make those similar connections that I've been fortunate enough to have.
That's amazing. Of course, can you talk about some of the top stars and scorers that you have on your Buffalo Beauts team?
Yeah, my focus is really, we again, I was fortunate in the aspect of that. Mandy Cronin had drafted Carly Jackson, who is our starting goaltender, and just as phenomenal. I'm not sure if you saw the recent news from the league, but she's a finalist for goaltender of the year, and she's a finalist for the newcomer of the year award. And I hope she wins both of them, because she certainly deserves them. But my mindset is, and it's just something that my coaches and I agree upon, and something I felt strongly about for a while, is that you build from the crease on out. And we were able to lay that foundation this past season. My first wasn't quite a full season as GM, because, like I said, I wasn't there for the draft or the first couple of players that we signed. So I'm really looking forward to this off season and getting a full season of my own under my belt. But we were able to do that. So we solidified Carly Jackson as our starting goalie, and CJ, she's just phenomenal. She's just is amazing. She is as a goaltender. She's even a better person. And I'm very happy with our goaltending in general. We have, two solid goalies in behind her, and Katie Flagg, who is another rookie this season, and Kelsey Newman, who's a veteran of the Buttes and has been around for a number of seasons and won the Isabel Cup. So the goaltending part was established. One thing that really hurt us in 2019-20 was we gave up a lot of goals, and we had a lot of penalties against us too. But we needed to improve our blue line and our defense core. So we were very fortunate to get MJ Pelletier back, to get Lisa Chesson re-signed, but I knew that I needed to continue to improve upon our blue line. So I brought in, Allison Matteau and Whitney Dove. And we brought back Lenka Tremova, Dominique Kramer, who is just that was a huge signing for us. She was my first officially announced signing with the team. So I really wanted to make sure that we strengthen our defense core. Meg DeLay was another one that we brought in. So I feel that that part of it, we got that solid defense, and they're great defenders, but they're also great on offense as well too. They can generate a lot of points. They can generate a lot of scoring opportunities. Move down low. They're good puck carriers. Each of them has a solid shot from the point. And then, you mentioned a couple players earlier. Taylor Kersey is, of course, our team captain. She's a top-notch sniper. She's a sniper in hockey in every sense of the word. If you were to look it up in a dictionary or a hockey glossary, you should put her picture there because she fits it to a T. But I think, one thing I want to focus on as we head into this coming season is just adding more offensive flavor and adding more depth to our roster, that will behoove us as we head into season 7. Brooke Stacy's another player that she's up for the Dena Lang Award. Here's a player, Brooke. She had a baby, and a few months later, she's back on the ice playing professional hockey, and she's a natural scorer as well too. Jordan Duran, who really stepped up and was huge for us in Lake Placid in a leadership role and even with point production. And that was so our top line. I'll before I wrap up this question with you, our top forward line in Lake Placid was the line of Jordan Duran at center, and then Kristen Lewicki and Audie McDougall on the wings, and that was who created most of our offense. We struggled to get some offense, but certainly those three did not at all. They were lights out, in my opinion. Lewicki led us in point scoring for the 6 games that we played, and McDougall was our leading goal scorer. But they were lightning quick, worked very well cohesively together, has some solid vision on the ice, and it really paid off for us. So going into next season, and certainly with the draft coming up and free agency, uh, we laid the foundation for the culture that I want to have within this team, and the recipe of success that we're starting to build. But now it's a matter of just polishing and adding those final ingredients that are going to make us a team to be reckoned with.
Can you talk about, of course, the process of drafting the players? And then can you talk about, of course, I've noticed that you only signed the players to a 1 year contract instead of like a 5 year or 6 year contract. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, the first point with the draft, historically, and it will continue to be this way for the season as well too, is that draft eligible players are players that have recently completed their senior season of college hockey, whether that's NCAA on the American side or U Sports in Canada. So they've either just recently completed their senior season, or they will have completed their senior season by September 1st, and have their degree and all that. So you really sift through that talent or that pool of players, and you see what your needs are. And you certainly need to be cognizant of the fact that geography plays a factor. You unless you're able to work out particular arrangements for it so that it works for the player and that they're able to relocate. You might not go and draft a player that's from California or from British Columbia. Although saying that, I did have 2 players on the team this past season, one from British Columbia and one who was initially born in California. But all joking aside, you do have to be mindful of geography, and you wanted to have it set up that players that you're drafting, if you do draft them, that they're going to be able to relocate to Buffalo and live comfortably and find employment outside of hockey. And there's a lot more of scouting involved with it from that regard than what there might be for the NHL or men's professional hockey, because as we know right now, women's players are not able to. They unfortunately do not receive a salary yet that enables them to just do hockey alone and not have to have a job outside of that. So you have to be mindful of that as you're deciding who you want to have on your draft chart or your draft pool, to see on the players that you're looking at. It also takes a lot of discussions with college coaches. Fortunately for me, between my time as a hockey writer and then my time with the Beauts as well too, I've gotten to know a number of different college coaches, and you keep your finger on the pulse in that regard to see what seniors are coming out, what upperclassmen are coming up through the ranks and are looking to continue their hockey careers after college or university. So there's a lot of discussion there, and I would say also too, it's kind of a courtship in a way too, where you talk with the players and you see, you kind of feel them out in a regard of, have you thought about playing hockey once you're done with school? Would you like to play professionally? How would you feel about living in Buffalo? Those types of things. So there's a lot more talking through and planning and scouting, as I said, than what there might be for other other preparations for drafts and other leagues. But it's a very exciting time as well too. I look at the draft as, not only a way to add some talented players to your roster, but it's a celebration, because here are these players that they've worked their butts off for the past 4, sometimes 5 seasons, and a lot of people don't get an opportunity to see women's collegiate hockey. So with the draft, it's great to put the spotlight on this fresh batch of players that are going to be coming to your team and who you're proud to work with, and really showcase what they're all about. So I love the draft. I get excited for it each year, and this year is my first year as GM of the Beauts, where I'll be able to orchestrate the draft and decide who the Beauts are selecting. So I'm very excited about that. But it's mostly a great opportunity for the players. In terms of your question about the signings, so yeah, that's another trickier part of it, for being a GM in the NWHL, is that presently our contracts are single year contracts, and that's done for so that the players have some flexibility there, right? Because again, my point of that they don't work jobs that, or they don't have a hockey career that pays them enough to be their full-time career. Some of them, they might do hockey for a while, or they might have to try to find a balance between hockey and work. But at some point, a lot of the players, they're not able to continue their hockey career. And so that there's less of an obligation there, financial obligation, and it gives the players some flexibility. They are single year contracts. So it's nice for the players, and it's certainly understandable in that regard. It does make it a little trickier for the GMs, because it means that each summer you're negotiating a brand new roster, and it's not entirely brand new in every sense of the word, because obviously you're re-signing players that had played for you previously. And I'd say from 2019 20 season to this past season, we had about a 50% turnover between the roster of the prior season and into this current, the one that we just had. Um, so you are having to do a lot of, but negotiating and filling that same thing. Every year you're going to do, at least while we have single season contracts, each year you're going to do 20 to 25 contract negotiations. So it definitely makes it a little tricky that guard, but it's also fun, and it's also enjoyable, and it's a great opportunity for you to sit down with your players, talk about what their goals and visions are for the future and what they want to achieve, and that plays a huge talk in contract negotiations. And it's interesting as well too, when you notice players, or have scouted a player that's played on another team or maybe overseas, that catches your eye and you want to bring into the fold. So it's a great opportunity. So it's kind of, although it can be tricky to navigate, it's also a wonderful opportunity as well too, to kind of start afresh to some extent with your team each season.
Do you foresee y'all signing players to a 5-year contract instead of a 1-year contract?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
In the future, do you see yourself like going like the NHL and other professional leagues, signing y'all's players to a 5-year contract instead of a 1-year contract?
Yes, that's indeed something that I think will happen. I don't think it will happen. I shouldn't say it won't happen anytime soon. If I was a betting man, I would say within the next 2 seasons. I think it would be wonderful if it did happen. I would say especially for your players that are from out of the area, right? So, I said to you all the reasons why we couldn't have more than single year contracts, but the other side of the coin is that if you had multi-year contracts, there's a lot of players that does benefit. So, for example, we had two Slovakian players on the team this past season, Lanka Tremova and Iveta Klimasova. Each year, they're in the off season, they're back and forth between Slovakia and the United States. And so if they had a longer term contract, it would give them a chance to lay some roots down in the area. Maybe they purchase a car or for transport, or they some players might buy a house or rental property or that sort of a thing. So that's the other side of the coin, that if you had longer term contracts, it would enable your players a chance to lay some roots down. And I think the league will get to it at that point, at some point. I don't think it will be this season. It may not even be the season after that. But I do think it will happen at some point for exactly the reasons that I named, is that it gives the players some security and gives them a chance to lay a bit of a foundation.
Where can my listeners find, of course, the Buffalo Beauts games at?
So for this past couple of seasons, and likely for seasons ahead, Twitch, which was something I was not familiar with until 2 seasons ago, but it's an online platform for a lot of different productions, and all of our games are televised on Twitch. You can just go to twitch.com. The NWHL has two different channels, NWHL and NWHL2. All the games are shown on Twitch. It's free. What I'd like to do when I'm not at a game myself and I just want to tune into one is I'll hook my computer with an HDMI cord up to the TV, and I'll just watch the games like that. And I know a lot of our players' families do the same thing. They'll tune in if they're not able to make a game in person. This past season, of course, with the playoff portion that ended up happening just a few weeks ago in Boston. The games were televised on NBC, which was wonderful for our league and for our sport. And my hope would be, and I think everybody's hope would be, that our games will continue to be televised on NBC. I don't know, if that would include regular season, maybe just playoffs for the time being, but I think that that's something that we definitely want to see going forward for the years ahead, is just as much exposure as possible for our games, to really showcase our players to the fans and give the fans an opportunity to tune in.
How important is it to get the NWHL league on national television, like you said, NBC or ESPN, where other sports leagues are there?
Sure, I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge. A lot of people, and even in Buffalo, I'll run into people from time to time that just didn't know that we had a women's professional hockey team. People still to this day watch a lot of TV, whether it's on a traditional TV set or on their device, but a lot of television is watched. So I think you need to tap into that as a means of exposure. The individual certainly has a large presence on social media. We have a lot of followers on the league's account and the team accounts. And certainly we had huge viewership for the games that were on Twitch as well too. Just a major turnout in terms of numbers. So the interest is definitely there. Now it just fans need the opportunity. So when you invest in women's sports and you showcase the NWHL on network television, you're reaching all those people that may not have known that such a league and such teams exist, and it gives them a chance to tune in. And people aren't going to flock to something or support something if they don't know that it exists. The first thing you need to accomplish is that making sure that fans know that your league and your teams exist, and it really starts from there.
What are some of your future plans with the Buffalo Beauts?
Well, at the top of the list is we definitely wanna win the Isabel Cup. You know, I'd say I have to be honest and say, it was a gut punch to not make it to the playoff portion of season 6 and compete in Boston for the Isabel Cup. That's just the case with sports in general, is that only one team gets to win the championship, and we're fortunate to be one of the 6 teams competing each year, and we definitely, all teams had their challenges this past season because of COVID in one way or another. So I think as we go into season 7, which seems to be what's going to be more of a traditional season, our goal is ultimately to win the Isabel Cup. The Buttes had won it for the 2016-17 season, and I want that experience. I want that for not for myself, in particular, yeah, it would be great to be a GM of a championship hockey team, but I want that for our players, and I want that for our staff, and I want it for our fans. Buffalo deserves it, our players deserve it, and our city deserves it. Our fans especially do, especially our diehard hard ones. So our goal in the long term is certainly winning the Isabel Cup. But in addition to that, I had said to you previously that I want to create a team where our players are growing and fostered, and it leads to other opportunities in their lives. I think there's a ripple effect to hockey when you promote and build a positive environment, and those same things that I told you that I have been fortunate enough that experiences that I had earlier in my life culminated into me having an opportunity to be the Beats GM. I want to see that for our players. I want them that when they come to Buffalo, it's their most positive experience yet in hockey. And who knows, maybe something that they did in Buffalo or somebody that they met in Buffalo, one of their teammates, whomever, maybe it benefits them later on down the line and opens up some doors for them. So as kind of a byproduct or an aside of wanting to win the Isabel Cup, I'm very big about building people up and building from within. I promoting from within when possible. But I think life is all about what you can do for other people and being of service to others. So while we're here and competing for the Isabel Cup, it's important to me to really just build our players horizons for them, and perhaps if I'm fortunate enough to do so, open some doors for them later on down the line.
What advice would you give upcoming future GMs of professional sports?
Be yourself, first and foremost. I'm sure that people, and you can't help it because it's so much in your face, whether it's whether it's an article in Sports Illustrated or ESPN, or a documentary, or some blog site that you're reading or something like that. It's so much in your face what this GM did, or this person is like, and you see former NHL players that are GMs, and you see former Olympians that are GMs, and somebody might look at me and, and here I was just a hockey writer. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't really matter how you get there. You're there for a reason. You were hired for that role, and you need to believe in yourself and just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. One thing that I think all of our players and all of our staff would say about me is that I'm a true blue individual, and that's not me tooting my own horn. It's just that what you see is what you get, and I believe in treating people the way that I would want to be treated, and but that's what works for me, and you should just be yourself, and there's no right way or wrong way to go about getting to this opportunity. You don't have to be an ex-player in order to do it. You don't have to be an analytics expert, that sort of thing. Don't do those comparisons. Don't think that you have to be somebody that you're not. Be yourself, and people will respect you for it. And trust your instincts as well too. So I would say all those things for sure. Um, and love what you do. I've said it a couple times on this call that being the Beats GM is a dream come true for me, and it is. So while I'm in this role and while I'm experiencing it, I'm going to relish in it. It's not an opportunity that comes around very often, and I'm so thankful for it, and so thankful for my family and friends and players and coaches that have believed in me and supported me. And I think for anybody else that has aspirations of getting involved in sports management, whether it's in hockey or a different sport, is you really just follow through with what I said. Be yourself, believe in yourself, stick to your instincts and your convictions, and don't think that there's one right way to go about something or get to a certain destination.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with, of course, the Buffalo Beauts at?
Sure. So for the Buffalo Beauts, all of our social media, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, is at Buffalo Beauts. So easy enough to look up. I'm also I have a mostly a presence on Twitter. Mine is at my handle is at Nathaniel A Oliver, but without the E. It didn't let me fit the E in there, so VR, but at Nathaniel A Oliver. And I'm on Instagram as well too. The Beauts also have a Facebook page. So we're definitely out there and available on social media. Our social media is pretty entertaining, I would say. And we certainly love the support that we get from our fans.
Thank you again, Nate Oliver, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Buffalo Beauts as the general manager.
Well, it's much appreciated, Brandon. I wish you the best of luck as well too. And if there's anything I can do for you going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Nate Oliver, for your interview, and best of luck.
You too.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.